Hello and welcome. This is one of my 60 inspirational conversations. Oh my gosh, these are getting so interesting. The bar has been really high, Marie. So there's no part of me that doubts that you will absolutely exceed it. So I have the joy and the pleasure today of being with a good friend of mine, Marie Arymar, who we have actually met in person as well as online, which is really nice, and known each other a reasonable amount of time. So, and I know there's lots of amazing things that you have been up to, done, are doing. So will you tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you're doing, and let's see where this conversation goes.
That's what I love. Like, we have no idea where this is going to go, do we?
Zero.
I love that. I really love that. So, I describe myself as a clarity coach. Um, and the basis of the way I work is that I see the innate mental health and well-being in everybody, and I talk to that, and I just love it. So really coming from a place of just clear-minded. And I work with younger people, but more and more I'm working with parents.
Mm.
And I've got a little vision, which is that I'd love to eradicate the bottom third. It's just an arbitrary fraction. The bottom third of the CAMS waiting list. So the children and adolescent mental health service. So their waiting list it's about 2 years long.
Wow.
And and they're actually really working with people who are suicidal now. They're really not. But schools and colleges and parents and GPs are all referring these young people. And I'm sure that we could just get rid of the bottom third off that waiting list with the work that we do. I just am convinced. And so I used to think that, because I come from a further education background, I used to be pastoral lead in some big colleges. So looking after personal tutors, senior tutors, um, you know, everything to do with the students that wasn't the academic classroom stuff came under our remit. So I'm very passionate about young people and young people being heard, really deeply being listened to, and being able to say whatever it is that they want to say and find a way to say it. They might not know what they want to say or how to say it. But more and more and more, I was working with the parents of those students. So, so I've kind of got a niche that I work with young people, but so often a parent will say to me, "Oh, my child's so anxious and my child isn't going to school and my child is so worried about this and my child, isn't sleeping." And I sort of say, "How are you doing?" They say, "Well, I'm really anxious and I'm really worried and not sleeping." So it's kind of like, well, maybe there's a two-pronged approach here.
Mm.
So that's what I do. I also have a little book called Do You Want to Know a Secret, which is aimed at 8 years up, all the way up to 108. And it's just been translated into German. So I'm so thrilled about that.
Oh,
So
that,
thrilled.
yes.
And I have a little podcast series. And yeah, I just do anything that we can help people and young people get a sense that they're okay and they're not alone.
Mm.
Isn't that nice? If you knew that you were okay and you weren't alone.
Yeah, it's life changing, isn't it? It really is life changing. When I know I had a conversation this morning with a lovely lady, Victoria Green, and she was talking about a huge insight she had when she came across the principles and looked in this direction. And it was this, oh, it's not all on me. And it's that whole thing again, isn't it? We feel alone when we think this is all on me and there isn't anything or anyone that is going to help. This is all on my shoulders. And I think what the principles did for me, and more and more and more, I'm realizing, yeah, when I feel like that, that horrible feeling is telling me, no, 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 you shut out all this. Even if it doesn't look like there's another human being around, we have mind. We have this, which is innate within us, that comes up with the most amazing answers. And it's like, Yeah, when we think we're alone, it really hurts when we're thinking in that way. And that
Mm.
hurt is the information to kind of say, no,
Mm.
it's not like that.
Isn't it amazing when we have those little inspired moments of insight, those moments,
Mm,
we often don't give them the light of day because we're so busy thinking about what's wrong,
mm,
innocently, all of us, me included,
yeah,
that we often kind of go, oh, yeah, that was nice. Anyway, back to,
the problem.
yeah. And the other thing that amazes me, and this is a lived experience for me too, is how challenging conversations are at home between parents and children or young people. And I often think it's because, and often we think we've got really good communication, but I often think we don't. And it's because the parent thinks they're responsible for the young person's well-being, and the young person thinks they're responsible for the parent's well-being. And I think that gets missed a lot. So like I'm the child of an alcoholic. I overshare. So I'll be telling you loads of things, right? Who
No,
cares? My
there's no,
heart is firmly
there's,
here.
there's no such thing as oversharing, and I'm the same, so it's all good, all good. We're authentic, Marie, authentic.
I am most definitely authentic, whatever shape and size that is. But it's like, as a child of an alcoholic or anybody who's got some kind of sense of mental disease or sickness, you think you've done something wrong,
Mm,
or you think you're responsible, or you think if I was just better, they wouldn't drink. Or if I could just keep mum calm, then she won't drink. So you're constantly, and I meet so many young people like this, and the parents innocently aren't aware.
yeah.
That's a sweeping generalization. That probably isn't, there's no truth to that, but often we can miss what's going on. And I just think often the young person will say, oh yeah, but I can't talk to mum about that because that'll really, really send her into a spin, or it'll really upset this, or it'll. So I find all of that really fascinating.
Mm.
And yeah, full
And
stop.
I think no matter what, I think it is part of the human condition. I think it is incredibly rare, no matter what our start in life, to not have some kind of story like that, whether it be because we had an alcoholic parent, whether it be whatever, somewhere along through conditioning or whatever, we get this idea that we are responsible for things we're not responsible for, whether it is an idea that we're not good enough in some way, shape or form for some. And all of these stories are the reasons why that makes sense to us. It's like, oh, well, obviously, my mom was this, or my dad did this, or I didn't have parents, or whatever it is. We have this idea in some way or another that, because I know for me, and it's still, again, like it's a lived experience and still dropping away now, this idea. I realized that I had this idea, if I get this right, then it will be all right. And if I don't get it right, it won't. And it's then I'm striving to get it right when there's not even a right to get, it's like, that's the whole point. I suddenly saw, whoa, I'm striving in so many areas of my life to get it right, whether it was with my business, whether it was my children, whether my relationship, whatever, this idea that if I get it right, and it's the seed is the same basic story, isn't it? If I get this right, my mum will be okay and she won't drink. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. And one way or another, like you say, I see that with clients of all ages that I work with. There is some seed of, yeah, somehow or other I've not got this right, or I'm not good, I'm not good. It's the same thing wrapped up, isn't it?
yeah, I think no matter how you look at whatever the thought seed is, it's all the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. Mm.
I went out for um I went and did some exercise yesterday. I went for a swim with a girlfriend, and we just had a quick bite to eat in the place where the pool was, and it was really nice. And have to be careful because she might watch this. And sorry. And she's been seeing this guy for about 3 years, and they've split up now because he crossed a line. And she had a line in her mind, and he crossed it, and that was that. And I've been staggered at how not that staggered sounds judging. I've just been beautifully impressed by how okay she is. You know, she's been really okay.
Mm.
And she's like, I've made a decision and I'm standing by it. And it came from such a place of clear-minded okayness that
Mm.
I just was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then she spoke to me last night and she said that she'd had some news and perhaps he hadn't been faithful. And she started to seek all these, well, I need some answers. It's like, what answers do you need? And she said, well, I need to know, is it true? Who was it? And how long is it going on for? And it's like, well, would you be happy if you had those answers? And she was like, well, probably not. It's like, why wouldn't you be happy? And she's like, well, and as the I'm really praising the conversation, but it's like, well, because each answer is probably going to give me a whole load of other questions. And it's like, yep. You know, and the more we talked, the more kind of agitated she became.
Mm.
You know, she was becoming quite, she got a little bit upset, not much, a little bit upset. And and this was not coaching, this was just talking, just listening. And she said, should all feel a bit upset. And it's like, it's funny that, isn't it? You know, and she said, I don't need to know any answers. How are any of these answers going to help me? And it's like, that is mental health in action right there. Right there. It was so beautiful. It was so lovely to watch this woman coach herself.
Mm.
And she went, actually, now that I don't want the answers, I feel all right again.
We have such a brilliant guidance system, don't we? Yeah, now I've realized I don't need to do that. I had a realization there was something going on between me and a friend, and this idea that we needed to tell each other, if you like, what we were doing wrong. And then it was like, and I was speaking to my partner this morning in the kitchen, and I was like, imagine if I just said to you now, can you tell me all the things about me that are wrong? And then I'll tell you all the things about you that I think are wrong. Then you go off to work and I go off to work. How do you think our day will be? I said, how about if I tell you all the things that I love about you and you tell me all the things you love about me, and then we go off to work? How do you think our day will be? It's kind of like seeing when we are determined to see the wrong in people. And when you said about how you describe your coaching, I'm really, really seeing the genuine usefulness of seeing the good in people, the innocence in the things that they do that maybe, aren't the best, and me too. And then the genuine beauty. And when we look for that and we create that in that person, if we sort of like, we didn't come on this and I didn't say, oh yeah, Marie, I didn't like that thing you did the other day, and oh, your book's not that great, We don't.
It's only small.
It's
Yeah.
it's only small. Could you have not made it a bit bigger, And only German? Do you know how many languages there are, really? You've only got it in English and German. Come on, up your game. And this is it. Like, if you genuinely, and we do, I know we're playing around there, but we genuinely do have conversations with people like that, don't we? Sort of pointing out, or it certainly seemed to be certainly in the past, a good idea to tell you what was wrong so that you can put it right.
Well, fixer, that's the ultimate fixer,
Yeah.
isn't it? And I am Fixers Anonymous. You know, I am a born again non-fixer through the principles. And actually yesterday I had a client and I said, "Oh, I've just gone into fixer mode. Here I am. I can see it. I have a drawing that I do with people about the barriers to listening to ourselves, and one of the quadrants is fixer mode. So I'm like, oh, I can see that quadrant's lit up, so I'm so visual." And she said, that was fascinating watching you notice where your thinking's gone and not be upset about it, but just not going down the rabbit hole any longer.
Mm.
So I still fix, or the urge to fix, definitely.
The invitation to do that. When you see something clearly in someone, it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I can help you here.
Yeah, or list all the things that are wrong. I mean, oh God, I mean, I've done that. Here, come and sit down and let me tell you all the things that are wrong with you and how I can make it right. That was me.
Yeah, me too.
Amazingly, I've still got friends.
Mm,
But I genuinely thought I was doing people a service.
yeah.
I genuinely thought. And then actually in my 20s, somebody gave me the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, changing my world. And it's like, oh, I'm looking in the wrong direction. He wasn't 3 principles, but he was onto a good thing with that book. And actually, I ended up teaching 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers in college. I became a master facilitator for the Covey Franklin blah, blah, blah.
I'm impressed.
Oh, thanks. It was just a 2-day course. But you know, it's like you suddenly realize that not only do you not need to do that anymore, but people don't actually want it. Your perception of
Yeah.
your perception of your reality is not their perception of the same reality. Well, it isn't the same reality.
Mm.
That was a big deal for me.
Yeah. And I think the other side of it, seeing when we actually tell people what we love about them, that is so much. And you can see it like with children and young people as well. It is the whole, if you're forever telling them off and telling them what's wrong, and we do, you know, as parents, it's almost like you're almost taught to do it that way. It's like, you know, your job is to correct your child, to put your child right, but it is like, actually, you can really see that when we tell someone what they do well, and I love it when people tell me what I do well. And I think it's also really, really sad if we've got to such a place that when we do give someone a compliment, they really can't take it because they're so down on themselves, because we are so used to, no, tell me what's wrong with me. And it's like, that is so sad as well, isn't it? It's like, because we are so much better when we build each other up. It's so much nicer, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. This is a bit random. Go with me. Have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
No,
Have you ever heard of Ted Lasso?
no.
Oh my days. Ted Lasso is a TV program and it has won probably every award that's ever been given. And it's on Apple TV, and it's really worth upgrading your phone to get 3 months free Apple TV, or just paying $9.99 for 1 month. And it's basically, Ted Lasso is 3 principles. It's a TV series, but it's not 3 principles, but it might as well be. And the very, very quick premise is British Premiership football club. The owner wants to ruin it for lots of reasons. So she brings over Ted Lasso, who's an American. He's from Kansas. He doesn't know anything about soccer, football. He only knows American football. And she brings him over because he thinks he'll be so terrible that he'll ruin the club just because he knows nothing about English soccer. But he is the most forgiving, non-judging, wise, beautiful soul. And so many things happen, and he just sees the diamond in people. So all he sees is the good, and he tells them, and he says, I appreciate you. And I've said it ever since, actually. It's not, I appreciate that. It's like, no, I appreciate you. And it is possibly the most powerful and funny and lovely thing I've ever seen. So if anybody watches this and they don't know it, go and watch.
Mm.
It's absolutely wonderful. And you can't help but feel completely uplifted and have faith in human beings. Not bad for a TV program, is it?
No, no. And you can see in the simplicity in that. Now, I'm not saying that's easy, because I know sometimes when people appear to be doing things that are irritating me or going against me, or it feels like they're not appreciating me or putting me down, but just to come from that place of, I am just going to see the good in you and appreciate you. And I think if even if we just had a whole, right, let's do 30 days of all I'm going to do is see the good and appreciate, I think it would really show us our own judgments and how difficult that is for us sometimes, and yet how life-changing it would be to genuinely do that.
Mm. Yeah. I did that with my husband the other day. We've been away in Cyprus, and we were either tired or, I don't know, we were fine, but it was slightly sticky, You know him, he's adorable. So, it was okay. And he was sitting outside drinking coffee, and I went and sat down, and I looked at him, and he just looked at me as if he was expecting me to say something that was going to be a bit irritating. What?
He clearly
And,
know you very well, Marie.
and I just sat down and I just said, I just want to tell you all the things that I really appreciate about you. And he just sort of sat back, and I listed, like, I hadn't planned it. I just listed, like, I don't know, 50 things. Some of them were tiny, some of them were huge. And I could just see him. I didn't do it for him, I did it for me. I just really wanted to say something to him to really let him know I appreciate him. I mean, I can't say it any other way. And I could just see everything about him just relax. And he didn't have to come back with, he said, thank you, that was lovely. And I didn't need him to then give me a list, or, oh, I gave you 50, you gave me 48. Nothing like that.
No.
But it's like, but I tell you what, the real gift in doing that, to take it one level further, is it's time. Just sat with him, and we just had 5 minutes. I mean, talk about being present. It's like, I just want to look at you and tell you all the reasons why I appreciate you. Like, there cannot be anything else going on for that to happen, or for that not to happen. You choose.
That is in itself is a game changer, isn't it?
Oh,
I can see it was a version of that I decided with my relationship with Russ. It was just like, I'm not going to criticize him. And if I have the thought, I challenge myself, if I have the thought to be critical of him, I'm going to say something nice. I'm not going to say anything until I can say something nice. And I know initially when I started doing it, it would be a little bit like, I really love the way you do this, because I'm in that frame of mind, feeling critical. But what I see now, a little bit like, it is so easy to say beautiful things to him, because I feel so good, and it like everybody wins. Like you can't,
absolutely.
you
But the
can't say,
question,
go on, no, sorry.
sorry, Deb, you go.
Oh.
We're both so enthusiastic. That's so much to say.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So all I was going to say is you can't genuinely say something nice to somebody else without feeling good yourself. And if it's genuine and they hear it, they're going to feel good. So it's such a beautiful, all giving gift, isn't it?
It so is. And what I was going to say was the question that always comes into my mind is, well, where's my experience coming from? Or where's their experience coming from? But if I'm thinking something critical, it's probably not them. Okay, let's even be more definite. It's not them. I've got thinking that feels critical about, or critiquing or criticizing. Because if I had critical thinking, I'm probably going to say CPR now. That's critical thinking, isn't it? Like, I gotta make a decision right now.
Judgmental thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah. And like you say, where is that rooted? Where does that come from? I heard somebody, a guy, it was on a YouTube channel, a really interesting guy. What's his name? Robert E. Grant. And he's a really, really clever guy. Like he's a mathematician and a musician, and he says some really interesting things. And he was on this podcast, and at the end someone asked him a question, and he said, yeah, the problem isn't that we don't love each other, it's that we don't love ourselves. And I can kind of see the cycle of that, because I can see when I don't love myself, like if I have judgmental thinking about myself, I've got judgmental thinking. So then I'm seeing through a judgmental lens, and then I tend to see things that are wrong with other people. And one thing I noticed fairly recently was, if there is someone, and I have definitely done this, I've seen it in myself, and then I see it in other people. And it's like, if I am in a space of really not loving myself, so I am a little bit unkind to you, for example, and so then you're hurt, and so you're maybe a little bit unkind to me, then I have the evidence that I'm not lovable because you're being unkind. And we kind of get ourselves into this circle, don't we? And whichever side of that I'm on, if someone is unkind to me and if I'm not in a place to stand in my knowing of who I truly am, I will take that on board. But that comes from a place of me not loving myself and thinking I'm not good enough. And so this cycle, and it's like, oh wow, when we do that. And yet, if to me, looking in the direction of truth, of the principles of what this is, it's like, if I imagine, for me, this word works, but obviously, use any word. But if I imagine, how does God see me? It's like, he doesn't see me as worthless or stupid or not good enough or any of that kind of thing. It's like, no. And if we stop seeing ourselves in that way, we can.
And there's a real sort of how-to question. Well, how do I do that? But I think it doesn't amaze me, but what really I find interesting is that while we're looking through that lens of judgment or feeling critical or whatever the lens is, Valda Monroe, who's married to Keith Blevins, she talks about she calls it her pissed off dial, but it could be my judgment dial or my grumpy dial. It doesn't matter what dial it is, but she calls it her pissed off dial. And she says, I kind of suddenly realized that my pissed off dial was already on 3. And isn't that true? We've woken up, we're a bit tired, and grumpy dial's up to 5. And then our mind or our brain, probably our brain is the software there is designed to prove a point, look for evidence to prove, because I need to remain psychologically safe. That's the purpose of the brain, right? To keep us safe. So we do, absolutely, we complete that circle all the time. I knew there was a reason I should be grumpy because you're behaving like a complete dick. But nobody else thinks you are. Oh, my dial is up to 7. Isn't that interesting? But and that's the how-to, isn't it? when we ask ourselves the question, well, where is this experience coming from? Because it isn't coming from them.
That for me was like when I really realized that, and then began to take that on and continue, you know, because I mean, don't tell anyone this, but sometimes I do think it is someone else, you know, but don't ever tell anyone that, you know, that's between you and me. Because obviously I know the principle, so you know, don't ever tell anyone that sometimes I think other people.
They work in one way apart from that way.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, just that whole idea, because no one had ever told me that. It really, you know, and everybody acted as if this other person was doing this thing and talking to me as if this other person was doing this thing or whatever. So that was definitely, it was like, and then when I had the realization, came across the principles, began to see things differently, began to thought, oh, it's me. It's me. And initially for me, that was a really hard thing to take on, actually, to kind of, and are you sure? Did you not see? What, are you sure? But the more that I have seen, like you say, if I am different, the one thing that I have really, really, really seen is if I show up different, if I feel different, if I am in a different state, the world looks different. Mm.
You know, it's true, isn't it? And I was just sitting there while you're talking, thinking, well, you know, let's think about scenarios where that doesn't feel true. So, like, what if you know, I get mugged, I get burgled? You know what? I mean, that person has done that thing, right? And your experience, which I guess most people watching this will probably know your backstory, you know, we can't say, like, you and I'm teaching you, you know, what is it? Not new tricks.
Oh
To
yeah, I'll be a
suck
dog
eggs.
to teach
Suck eggs.
whatever.
Yeah,
Teach me new tricks and sucking eggs. Okay, cool.
that's it. But it's like, you know, we're not saying that you're the father of your children, you know, it was all on you. We're not saying that, are we?
No, but what I can truly see is if I had have known something and been different, it would have been different.
Exactly. Because I think it's about options.
Yeah.
And there would have been moments for you, or if you get, I don't know, mugged or whatever, where you think, this is it, I've lost everything. I have nothing. I have no hope. And the way that we work is that by not going down that rabbit hole, all these other options come up, don't they?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yeah, it really is, because I can see that it's what's that quote, Eleanor Roosevelt, isn't it? Nobody can make you feel anything without your permission.
Yeah, intimidated. Nobody can intimidate you unless you let them.
It's that
Mm,
whole
mm,
thing. And I can see I had to be a certain way for that to take place in that way that it did. And it's
mm,
not like you say that it's not that things won't happen. Like, life is a contact sport. People will do things, but
mm,
who we are being, how we are showing up, how we makes a difference, and
mm,
is the difference that makes the difference.
mm,
And that's where we have that power. And you can't have that power. What I can see is I couldn't know what I didn't know. And this is
mm,
where the work that you do, the work that we do, and looking in this direction and understanding, it's like, that's where I can see, if someone had have explained that to me way earlier, that would have been a whole different experience to me. And I
mm,
think, you know, more and more, I think we are moving in this direction. But it is like, if we explain to our children where their experience is coming from, like, I was brought up to believe that my experience came from other people. So
mm,
that's how I lived my life, as if those people were doing that to me, and I had zero input in that. And
Mm.
then I was a victim. And
Mm.
yet learning to understand the part that we play, where our own experience is coming from, and how if we see that, and in the moments when we can change, and in the moments when we can't understand, it will change, that makes a massive difference.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I just sit and thinking about two clients I currently have. One's 15, female, one's 13, lad. He's autistic, high functioning, brilliant musician, lots and lots of different musical instruments, unable to get into class, but really academically, high functioning, but just can't get into class or sits on his own little room all day. And the girl isn't able to go into school, hasn't been able to go into school because she doesn't look good enough. She's really gorgeous, as always. She's lovely and she's bright and she's got friends, but she talks herself out of going to school because she can't go. And through this understanding, they're back at school. So he's in class, not every class, but some days he gets into 5 classes. That's impressive. And some classes, like there was a science class, he got in for 45 minutes and then he asked to leave. But he's making decisions based on a different sense of his feeling, a different understanding of his feelings. So he's not identifying himself any longer as somebody who can't go into class. He's now saying, well, I'm gonna go to class, and if it feels right, I'll stay. It's like he's really managing his school experience. And she is actually, big up to Rani Bora, a lot of the work that she's been doing with how we create our own experience, our own miracles, really looking at this girl and sort of looking at, well, if this is how your day is, that you can't get out of bed and you take about 3 hours to put your makeup on, and literally, and then by that time it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you've missed most of school, and then there's no point you going, and actually if you do go, the first lesson's going to be terrible and the second lesson's going to be quite terrible, and the third, and then the last lesson is kind of sort of manageable. You've already decided how tomorrow's going to be. So if you can create that, what else can you create? And she's been, I mean, they're on school holiday now, but she's been getting up and going to school and arranging for friends to come and meet her and walk to school with her, and she can create that. Now, that's going to sound awfully simplistic, and anybody who listens to that who may have a child that isn't going to school that might be really annoying, but it has worked for those two young people. They've seen their experience differently. They've seen that they are not their thinking. And I use bubbles and balloons and all sorts of things with young people and adults, actually, to show that all these, they're temporary, all this stuff that comes through all of us. I mean, my pissed off or grumpy dial or judgy dial or critical dial or whatever can be wanged up. Me too. Yeah. But I just laugh at it now.
Yeah, there is so much freedom in seeing it for what it is. That's the thing, isn't it? Just to see, and to see, like you said, the choice in it. I know, I have a client, I was speaking to them about forgiveness, and something has happened to them, and I can see, but and seeing that forgiveness, it's not about the behavior of the person, but when we forgive, what it opens up in us and what possibilities it opens. Because like this person was in a space of, well, I have to hold on to this so that I make sure this doesn't happen again, and I have to hold on to it, and it's seeing that that's built into the system. And it's like, okay, you're doing the job of a system which is, state of the art, second to none. That's not your job. And these terrible feelings which are really, really restricting you, aren't about this because you aren't about this person and what they did. It's about the fact that you're not forgiving. And, that's someone else's, what happens to this person, that's not on you. That's not about, this forgiveness is about seeing for yourself the freedom that comes from making a different choice there. And I can really see some like, oh, and then it is like the stuff with Rani Bora and everything. Yeah, it's like, right, well, just play with it then. Like you say, with your, if there are people watching this and thinking that's too simplistic, it is incredibly simple. It's not easy necessarily, but it is incredibly simple. And I know for me, the way that I do that is I play with it. It is like, right, okay, all right, let's imagine if I did forgive them, or let's imagine if I did realize that I could feel something or create something different or do something different. What might that look like? And what might happen if I did that? And if we explore that with our mind, something wakes up in us. This system, we are designed to, we have got innate health. We are designed to, like corks, to pop back up to the surface. And if we will just, I would never tell somebody you have to forgive, but it is like, right, explore it, play with the idea. And if it doesn't look like a good idea to you, then don't do it, but explore it and see. Because I think it's this, yeah, I think it's when we are, no, I won't. It's like, well, you've shut down your possibility then. But just no one says, you can completely go back to holding on to it again if you want to, but play with what it would be like if you weren't, what might be possible. And I guess like with your young people going to school and things like that, it's that if we say, well, look at it, explore it. If it does get too much when you're in the class, you can put your hand up and ask to leave. Explore what
Absolutely. And Sydney Banks talks about, we've to forgive others, we need to forgive ourselves. And it's like, the moment that I go, oh, my grumpy dial is on 7, that is actually self-forgiveness. Unless I say, well, it needs to be a 9. Well, they deserve, me, which is an option. But
yeah.
actually, the very notion of, I've recognized my grumpy dial is up, or the young girl recognized that she can let go of that idea that she has, that I can't get up in the morning, it takes me 3 hours to do my makeup, and then it's too late and I'm going to hate school anyway. She can forgive that. It's that's the simplicity that feels so complicated.
Yes. And when we did that, that's why to me, just playing with it, it's like, it can feel too complicated, right? I have to, or and it takes us back into the arena that got us into this situation in the first place.
Yeah,
But if it's
yeah.
like, right, okay, well, just look at it, imagine it, think about it. The gift that we have of thought, the gift that we have of imagination is a real gift, and we can use that against ourselves or for ourselves. And it's like in those times, okay, so imagine what might happen if you didn't think that way. Imagine what else you can think.
Yeah. But it's even in the most simplest, in our relationships at home, let's just say we snap. We just snap at somebody, doesn't matter who it is. And then they probably snap back, or they go quiet, or I don't know, whatever happens. But that little moment of, I didn't need to do that. And then an apology. So I'm not maybe apologizing for whatever behaviors are going on out there, but I'm just apologizing for the fact that I snapped. I was curt or rude or whatever. It's such a lovely feeling, because that's self-forgiveness. It's like, I really didn't mean that to come out the way it did. I'm sorry. And maybe they'll snap back. Maybe they'll be critical parent back. Who knows? But it kind of doesn't matter, because the feeling, it's like, I'm so pleased I apologize for that. I'm so pleased I recognize that. I honored myself. And this is all a nanosecond. This is like a minute moment. But there's power in that. owning, it's being authentic. Right back. We've gone right full circle. That's being authentic,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Owning it.
Yes. And I think owning it is it is so key in that sort of seeing, yeah, when we do something, because I can see, like, in the years when I was in that very unhealthy abusive relationship, what would often happen was he would apologize and then say, but if you hadn't, so basically it was not owning, oh yeah, I did this. And a huge difference. I know my son struggled for a while, and what I saw really clicked for him, and what was the difference that made the difference was, he'd grown up seeing a lot of violence, and violence was a quite a go-to place for him sometimes, and violent in his moods, and not always necessarily physical violence, but maybe. And then just seeing and apologizing, and meaning that apology, and not making it be, he would just be like, yeah, I did that and I'm sorry. And that made a huge difference, because it really, the thing that he had done could be forgiven when he said, yeah, that was me, sorry. With no, but if you hadn't, there was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that was me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that made a huge difference. And you see, what also happens when we have the courage to do that is that opens something up in us, because that's what I watched happen with him, the possibility to not do that. Whereas when we don't own it, the possibility to do something different, how can we have the possibility to do something different? Because if we're saying, well, it wasn't me, you made me do that, so there's nothing I can do about it. Well, I'm sorry I did it, but there's nothing I could do about it because you made me do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm never going to see anything
Empty.
different,
Yeah.
or have a different option to do something different, because it's not me. I really saw that as a thing that breaks the cycle, when someone will actually say, yeah, do you know what? I did that and I'm sorry. And that's it. And I've seen it in myself, because then what happens is, the next time when something similar to that comes up, it's like, oh yeah. And more, initially you see it after the fact and you apologize. But then after a while, that realization starts to come before the act. And it's like, oh, I don't have to do this.
Yeah, because then we have that moment from the thing that's happened and our reaction. We have a moment of space that actually feels quite a long time, but it's like a split second, It's funny you use the word courage, because I often use a little formula, which I think I got from Jamie Smart. I really would love to say all these are mine, but they're usually not. And it's courage plus action equals confidence. And the courage to have ownership and to actually action that by verbalizing that, or in some way communicating that to another person or to ourselves,
Yeah.
just builds confidence in the fact that we are okay.
Yeah, because we are on a continuous feedback loop, aren't we? Our feelings are a continuous feedback loop. And like you say, when we genuinely own our stuff and apologize for it, meaning it, when we say, yeah, I did that, and actually that wasn't good or the right thing or whatever, there is self-forgiveness contained in that, and then verbalizing it, if that's, whether it is to ourselves or to someone else, whatever, we do that. There is definitely, we get feedback. Yep, you're headed in the right direction. Yep, you're headed in the right direction. It feels good. It genuinely does. So we are on a continuous feedback loop in that way, aren't we? And it's like, if we can, that's what we have such beautiful guidance in our feelings in that way. It's like, yeah, you can know, if you begin to get to know the nuances, know yourself, know what's going on, and we can sometimes fool ourselves, but the more we get to know ourselves, that that feedback is incredibly precious.
You know, in the corporate world, they call them 360-degree reviews, you know, where people are giving feedback all around them, managers and subordinates, team peers, whoever. But we already have it built in.
Yeah.
You know, we really do. And if we listen,
that's the courage piece, isn't it? Because sometimes,
yeah,
and especially if it is, yeah, you shouldn't have said that, or that wasn't a nice thing to say, or something like that, then it's like, oh yeah, this is a moment to apologize. Well, if I don't say anything, then maybe nobody will know, and I don't have to admit that I'm not perfect, or whatever it is. But all of that, none of that feels nice when we're pushing that down, and when we're denying it was us, any of those things. It feels horrible, doesn't it? But when we
do you know, there's one place where I'm not my best self. I could get you to guess, but I won't, right? There's one place where it seems that the principles leave me, and I just become an angry bitch version of me. And it's the dentist. And I have apologized to that woman so many times for my behavior. And it's because I'm forced. I live in Exeter in Devon. I'm forced to go to a private dentist, and it's quite expensive. And I genuinely believe in the NHS, and you know, it seems to rattle some political and socialist things in me, and I become this, and I even know it at the time. And then, you know, there's one time that I went back the next time, and I just said, I'm just so sorry for my behavior. And she said, it's okay. And it's like, well, thank you, but I really acknowledge how unpleasant I was. And she said, it's okay, you know. But isn't that funny? So the reason why I say that is because it happens to all of us. And this courage that we're talking about, and this self-forgiveness that we talk about, we all fall into the same traps. We all of us, you know, we can, you know, I can't remember the last time I road raged, but I bet it's in there somewhere, you know. But isn't it fantastic when we can go, oh, that's not the truth of who I am.
Mm.
That was a blip.
Yeah.
I'm going to own that. Or I'm not going to notice it for 3 weeks, and then I'll own it. Because I don't know. I can't predict what's going to happen.
No, it is the system and what is built into it. You can really see, and that comes down again to the whole, this just isn't on me. I can relax into this system. There are so many things put in place for me to help me, to guide me, that I can lean into. And you can see we get into all of these difficulties when we don't realize who we are and how this system works. And it is like, okay, we need to come with a guidebook, really, don't we? We should come with that. This is how we work. Because there are times when it really doesn't appear to work that way. And yet, and those are the moments when we can get caught out, and all of us can get caught out. But it is if we continue to come back to, no, this works one way only.
Yeah.
You'll be guided back to that, come back to that.
Yeah, because if mental health and well-being is innate, if it is inbuilt, if it is divine engineering, then we'd have to worry about that. Because it's kind of got us. You know, Aaron Turner said, why does everybody talk about thought? And he said, well, mine's covered. Kind of that's sorted. Consciousness, that's covered. That's there doing its thing. So thought's the only thing we've got. Thought's the only thing that we can look at that we might have some kind of involvement in. You know, and it's like, yeah, that's completely true.
Yeah.
You know, because everything else, it's got our back.
Yeah. It's totally built in. Whereas you see, if you like, our free will it's not so much that we can choose what we think, but we can choose where we put our attention on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That to me
Yeah.
is the free will that we have. It's like, yeah, okay. I'm, you know, Sydney Banks, the thing that I heard was, yeah, I don't have to think that. And no one had ever told me that I didn't, you know, if a thought was in my head, I thought that was real and true. And I, you know, if I thought, oh, Marie has done this thing to me that she shouldn't, I just thought that was true. And I had to think that and sort that out. And now
Yeah.
I see, oh yeah, that's more to do with your dials being in the wrong place and more to do with what, and you don't have to think that. And it's like, oh, if I don't think that, oh, guess what? The world's all honky-dory.
And isn't that just in itself, knowing that the thought is probably going to pop up, you know, the dentist, the lesson, the husband, you know, whatever it is, but I just don't have to give that any energy. Isn't that a lovely choice, a lovely option? Can I do a really, really like obvious plug for a course that I've got going on?
Please do, because my next question was going to be, how can people find out more about you, get in touch? So absolutely do that bit.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm running because we've been talking about young people and parents a lot. I'm running a short online program called Parenting from the Heart with Jack Pransky. And it's in June. It's 90 minutes once a week for 4 weeks.
Okay.
So it's quite short. They're all going to be recorded. It's in the evening in the UK. And Jack Pransky, you know, wrote the book Parenting from the Heart, which is a beautiful book. And he and I just decided that, you know, wouldn't it be lovely to try and what we've been talking about, that we don't have to go down the rabbit hole of worry and concern and fear and catastrophizing about our children and believe that we have to sort their mental health and well-being for them. Everything we've been talking about, you know, parents, I'm a step parent, but, you know, it's like being a fixer and a worrier is part of a parent's DNA. And well, maybe if that's not strictly true. So Jack and I are doing this program together. So people can find out about that because there's a pop-up on my website, which is realizationworks.com. Realization with an S, realizationworks.com. And we've kept it really cheap. It's £84 for the whole program because Jack's got a great message and it
No,
should be out
no. And so have you, Marie. So that,
there. Thank you.
yes. So if you, I'll put the links to that underneath this. You pop them over to me, and I will put them here in case anyone wants to find out about that.
Lovely.
Amazing. I'm certain of it. And thank you so much for today. That's been a gorgeous conversation, as I knew it would be.
And a big up to your conference, which I loved.
Oh, thank
Back
you.
in March, and I've already got my ticket for March 25. And I would say people come.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a beautiful space in that room, isn't there? And it's not about the speakers, or I mean, someone wrote a beautiful review. They sort of said it's not about the speakers, but they were brilliant. It's not about the venue, but that was brilliant. It's not about, there is something, it's about the people that are in that room. There is something magic when you give yourself the gift of being there and slowing down and connecting to yourself. There is something really beautiful happens.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.